This video has been in the works for a minute, but I'm very excited to share it with you. Welcome to my Tab S6 Lite versus iPad 10.2-inch comparison. It truly is a battle of the budget, and today I'm here to help you decide which one of these is right for you. But before we continue here, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like, comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or opinions, as the YouTube algorithm likes that, and will help push my content to more people. And if you are a recurring viewer, go ahead and click the bell icon and enable all notifications, as it does help the channel out a lot. Okay, right off the bat, I'm just going to say it. The Tab S6 Lite looks more modern than the iPad does. It looks more like the iPad Pro even, with its smaller, slimmer bezels and the lack of a physical home button. But even so, both are equally premium feeling. These are metal and glass constructed devices, and they don't feel cheap in the slightest bit. And even though these tablets look different, of course, they do have similar design characteristics. Logos right here, cameras right here, power and volume in the same corner, headphone jacks up top, and their own designated ports at the bottom. The only noticeable difference is with the speakers. We have two down firing with the iPad Pro versus one down firing and one top firing, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Another important distinction is the general shape of these tablets, and this is something I will touch on when I talk about aspect ratios, with these displays here. But anyway, as you can probably tell, the iPad is more square, more paper-like, a word you guys are used to hearing, whereas the Tab S6 is shaped more like a smartphone. It's a lot slimmer and taller and more widescreen, and again, I'll touch on this more in a minute here. And with that said, let's talk about ports on these devices. We have Lightning with the iPad, which is arguably legacy. It's been around for a while and it's slower. Whereas we have USB Type-C with the Tab S6 Lite, which is just generally more universal and convenient for attaching like a display or external storage. So I prefer the Tab S6 for sure in regard to connectivity. Apple really needs to bring USB Type-C to their iPads and iPhones. We're all waiting for that. Another aspect concerning connectivity is a smart connector found on the iPad 10.2-inch. The Tab S6, the more expensive one, has something similar for Samsung's own keyboard accessory and other accessories, but the Tab S6 Lite does not have that feature, nor does it have a proprietary keyboard from Samsung for that matter. So this is an advantage you do get with the iPad 10.2-inch. You can attach Apple's own smart keyboard, I believe, and you can also attach the Logitech Combo Touch, which brings a trackpad and backlit keyboard, which is really nice. But anyway, jumping back into speaker quality here, I have to say I am very impressed with what the Tab S6 Lite has brought to the table here. We got AKG stereo speakers here with one driver right here and the other right here, so side to side or top to bottom depending on how you hold the tablet. And in my experience, this setup is just superior. It might even be a little bit louder, a little bit more clear, or it might offer more clarity, but I'll let you be the judge here because audio quality is a bit subjective. So I'll play first this non-copyrighted song on my iPad 10.2 or 7th gen, and then I'll play it on here as well. Yeah, so this tablet offers just a great music listening experience and should be great for movie watching and just any media consumption in general. And still on the topic of audio, both of these devices once again have their own respective headphone jacks, which is great because, if I was, on a bit of a budget, if I didn't have a lot of money to spend on tech, I'd rather use wired headphones than buy wireless ones or be forced to buy wireless ones like you are with the iPad Pro, for example. Another aspect of design concerns these tablet styluses, and I'm going to be real with you. The Apple Pencil feels a bit more comfortable, a bit higher quality, and just, I feel like I could use this for a longer duration. However, this is an extra expense. You have to pay $100 extra, maybe $80 depending on if you buy it refurbished or used here, and it charges super weird. You got to plug it into the bottom of the iPad, and it doesn't magnetically attach or anything, so it's just kind of awkward. However, the S Pen, though it is a bit more cheap feeling, a bit more small, less comfortable to hold, it's still a great stylus, and the best part is it comes in the box. There's no additional cost. It has pressure sensitivity just like the Apple Pencil. It even has a button that you can push that can toggle some nice smart little functions here. If you hold this up to the display, you can smart select, do some screen capture and screen write and toggle, Samsung Notes right out of here, translate. There's a pen up app, but yeah, this is a great stylus, and once again, it comes in the box, no additional cost. And even with their differences, both of these styluses offer great digital handwriting experiences. I recommend you watch my note-taking comparison comparison between these two tablets and the Surface Go 2 if you want a better idea of what that experience is like, but I'd be happy with both, and once again, my wallet would be more happy with the Tab S6 Lite here. Another aspect of design is, of course, biometrics. With the iPad 10.2 inch or 7th gen here, we obviously get Touch ID in the home button, which works great till this day. It's very quick and accurate. And then with the Tab S6 Lite here, they did not include an under-display fingerprint sensor. However, they do have facial recognition, which works very well from what I've seen. I mean, it's very quick. Maybe it's not as secure, you know what I mean, as Touch ID, but still it's accurate and it's better than typing in a PIN, which you can also do as well. And the last thing I want to talk about in the design category is storage here. With the iPad 10.2 inch, you get two non-expandable versions. You have the 32 gig one and the 128 gig one. I have the smaller capacity one here, and it's just pushing it. I'm not gonna lie, it's decent for web usage if you're doing most of your, work or play online, or if you're just doing, like video streaming, for example. But 32 gigs is definitely a tight fit if you want to have photos and videos and a lot of stuff downloaded, whereas the Tab S6 Lite comes with 64 gigs standard. It also has micro SD expansion, which is great if you want to have a bunch of media on a card, not necessarily on your device's storage. And it also comes in a 128 gig version, which actually costs the same amount as the 128 gig iPad, so very similar in pricing here. Next up, let's talk display. And of course, this is a very important category when it comes to choosing the right tablet. And again, I'm just going to be real with you without wasting too much time here. Even though the iPad's display is not laminated and it has this gross air gap, right? Like, you can see it at a certain angle, and with the Tab S6, it feels like you are touching the pixels. Long story short, in regard to image quality, the display on here is just brighter and sharper. If we compare the actual nit count, we got 450 with the iPad here, max brightness compared to 435 with the Tab S6 Lite, and it does make a difference, I'm not gonna lie. And also the PPI is different, pixels per inch. We got 264 with the iPad compared to 224 with the Tab S6 Lite, and it is noticeable with the naked eye. But even with that said, the refresh rate is exactly the same. We got 60 on both of these devices, unlike like the iPad Pro and the rumored Tab S7. And kind of harkening back to that talk about shape with tablets here, I have to say that the 4:3 display aspect ratio with the iPad, once again, is more paper-like, and with that, this device is just better for reading articles and books and whatnot, especially in the portrait orientation, I would say here. As you can see, I'm just scrolling through, it feels like you're holding a newspaper or a book, whereas with the Tab S6 Lite, once again, with its weird 5:3 aspect ratio here, which is great for video consumption, by the way, I'll get to that in a minute here, it feels more like you're holding a smartphone horizontally or vertically. But don't get me wrong, you can still have a positive, article reading experience with this device here. I'm just saying that it just doesn't feel as natural as the iPad, in my humble opinion. Of course, you can feel free to disagree, but that's just my experience. One thing this 5:3 aspect ratio with the Tab S6 is good for, though, is movie watching and video consumption, on YouTube or Netflix or whatever. As you can see, we got black bars for days with the iPad here, whereas with the Tab S6, it's much more minimal and natural. And again, the stereo speakers on here just make this a very ideal device for media consumption once again. So if I was choosing a tablet for video watching solely, like Netflix, YouTube Red, whatever, I would honestly choose this over the iPad purely because of the aspect ratio being more natural for that kind of usage. And once again, the AKG speakers are great for media consumption in general. I do want to touch on display quality a bit more here for a second. There is a difference in panel type here. We have an IPS panel with the iPad, which offers better color and better viewing angles, but does consume a bit more power, and it's also higher resolution, keep that in mind, compared to the lower resolution TFT panel found in the Tab S6, which does not have as good color or viewing angles or brightness or sharpness. However, this does consume a bit less power, which is an important detail for a little bit later in this video. And once again, this display is laminated. It looks a lot better in that regard compared to the air-gapped display with the iPad, albeit this, I believe, is a bit more easy to replace because if the glass breaks, the display underneath is not necessarily damaged, but still, it's kind of gross and shouldn't be a thing, I think, in 2020. Next up, let's talk battery life, and this kind of shocked me. Despite the fact that the iPad has around an 8800 milliamp hour battery, after 3.5 hours of video playback at full brightness, it was down to about 30%, whereas the Tab S6 Lite was around 48%, despite the fact that it has a 7000 milliamp hour battery. And my explanation for that is the dimmer, lower res TFT panel offers more screen on time, which of course is a positive quality of this display, even though I think it is technically inferior in regard to image quality compared to the iPad. So yeah, I would say say simply, if you're doing a lot of content consumption with these tablets here, I'd go for the Tab S6 Lite if you want the better performer. I was once again very impressed here, and not only that, it has fast charging out of the box as well. So 15-watt fast charging compared to just the regular speed charging, I guess, you get with the Lightning port here. So yeah, I would say in regard to battery life, the Tab S6 Lite is the real champ. Next up, let's very quickly touch on camera quality here. And I know my viewers know my, stance on tablet cameras. I don't really care how good the quality is, so long as I can take decent pictures of papers and maybe dump photos of my friends or family, just like basic stuff, video chatting, etc. So long as my tablet can do that, I'm happy. And that's the case with both of these tablets. You have very basic 8-megapixel shooters on the back here, which take decent photos and videos, I would say. I'll get to that in a second here. No flash or anything, but there is a difference with the front camera. On the iPad, you have a 1.2 megapixel front-facing shooter, whereas with the Tab S6, you get a 5 megapixel one, and it definitely makes a difference in regard to the image quality. So if you're taking, selfies with your tablet, or if you want to, I would get the Tab S6 over the iPad. But if you're not, if you just want to do video chatting, then the quality should be pretty comparable, I would say here. And then in regard to back-facing image quality here, although both aren't great, don't expect anything crazy, I would say with the iPad, you get more natural-looking images. However, with the Tab, you get more aggressive noise reduction and higher contrast. So you might have a preference. I don't really care for both. They both do the trick here, once again, for photo and video in my book. And finally, let's touch on performance. And I just want to say, I'm going to refrain from making any comparisons or comments on the operating systems, because if you know me, I am more of an iPad OS person. I'm more of an iPad person for that matter. But even so, I am very much dedicated to remaining objective. I want to give the Tab S6 all the credit it deserves, right? So I'm not going to really say too much, because I think that both of these operating systems have a lot of great software available. They have a lot of great features. They're feature rich for that matter. And I think both of them have come a long way. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to your own personal preference as to which experience you prefer here. So I might, suggest you watch a, software or UI comparison, because that's not what I'm doing here. I'm purely, talking about the raw performance both of these tablets offer you. What I will comment on, though, is how smoothly these tablets can push their designated UI or operating systems. And I'm just going to be straight with you. I think the iPad does a better job for the most part in regard to most animations and such, and it makes sense because not only does Apple design the software on the hardware, but also if you compare, raw benchmark tests or scores, these single core scores, which sort of dictate everyday performance, how that's going to go, they're double with the iPad compared to half that with the Tab S6. So 346 compared to 752. So ultimately, looking past these comparable operating systems, both should be good for everyday tasks like note taking. But if you want to do a bit more with your tablet, specifically higher end gaming and stuff like that, I would say the iPad might be the way to go because of the software and hardware optimization, and due to the fact that the A10 is better in single core and multi-core tasks. But even so, I will say I have very much enjoyed my time with the Tab S6 Lite, and that's not a pity comment. I'm not throwing bread to the Samsung people watching. This is an affordable media and productivity machine with a great inbox stylus once again, and amazing AKG speakers, and it will definitely fit into the right user's workflow. And not only that, it has a great selection of free apps to go with it, like I brought up in my note-taking comparison video, and the battery life once again is just insane. And that about wraps things up here. I hope this video was helpful. Once again, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like, comment, and of course subscribe for more content like this. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.